This week, we will be wrapping up the transition process. The core question this week is, how do we complete an IEP that is specific enough to be the students, strong enough to hold up to scrutiny, and honest enough to actually guide what happens after the bell rings? In the Module 3 lecture, we will look at self-determination, graduation plans, the different pathways students on an IEP have to graduate high school, transition programs, summary of performance, including connecting students and families with resources, discussing age of majority, and inquire into what an Indicator 13 review is. An IEP self-determination plan is a special education strategy focused on teaching students with disabilities the skills needed to make their own choices, set life goals, and advocate for their own needs. The goal is to turn the student into an active leader of their IEP and transition. The core components of a self-determination plan focuses on building three main areas of student independence. First, choice and decision making, teaching the student to express preferences, solve problems, and weigh options. Second, self-awareness, helping the student understand their own strengths, limitations, and the exact accommodations they need to succeed. Third, self-advocacy, giving the student the communication skills to ask for help, explain their disability, and defend their rights. We want students leaving high school knowing themselves, knowing what their future wants to look like and how they can plan for it, and knowing the supports they will need to maintain control in their life. So, how can self-determination plans work? Student-led meetings. Rather than just having adults discuss the student's progress, students can participate in their IEP meeting by participating in the planning of the meeting, make a list of strengths and challenges, create a presentation, introduce IEP team members, share their future plans, and write thank you notes to those people who came to the meeting. Goal setting. Teachers and parents help the student outline exactly what they want their future to look like, such as going to college, joining a trade program, or living independently. Self-instruction. The student learns to direct, monitor, and evaluate their own learning progress. The student takes ownership of their education path. An example of a self-determination plan is a problem-solving model. Students solve problems through 4 steps. Step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, identify potential solutions to the problem. Step 3, identify barriers to solving the problem. Step 4, identify consequences of each solution. Research shows that students who include self-determination goals in their IEPs and take an active role in their meetings are much more likely to live independently, secure meaningful employment, and earn higher incomes after high school. As a teacher, we can help our students and we can guide our families too, encourage students to make choices and decisions about everyday activities, help them identify strengths and preferences, help them understand that choices have results and consequences, talk to them about the process of goal setting, encourage disability awareness, help them understand accommodations and the role they play in their life, talk to them about their rights, help them become involved in their IEP, and model problem solve. There's a model of instruction called Self-Determined Learning Model of Instruction, SDLMI. The idea is students become more self-determined as they identify their own interests and preferences. Students then set goals that are aligned with their interests and preferences. They engage in problem solving and decision making as they struggle working on their goals. Students learn to advocate for themselves and their needs when they encounter issues. One of the jobs of the case manager when working on a student's IEP is graduation planning. There are 3 main pathways for a student on the IEP with a disability to graduate. The typical way for all students to graduate is a credit-driven diploma, meaning you meet all district high school credit requirements. This means students do not require credit substitutions, but may require some specialized instruction to replace electives or core content areas. Typically, students who fall under this plan are considered college bound. Non-categorical credit-driven diploma is when a student is unable to meet the district's credit requirements. The IEP team may consider course substitutions or exclusions. Course substitutions must be documented within the IEP, describing what the classes are replacing and the amount of credits. These substitutions occur because the student's disability impacts their academic functioning in a way that the student is unable to access the rigor of the general education curriculum. Typically, students who fall under this plan are those entering the workforce or will attend a 2-year college before going on to a university. Graduation plans are IEP goal-driven plans that include students who graduate on completion of their IEP goals and objectives, along with the completion of their transitional services and activities as determined by their IEP team. Oftentimes, there is a portfolio a student is required to complete in addition to attending and passing agreed upon classes. The fewest number of students fall into this category. Typically, you see students who have the highest needs graduating on a grad plan. When discussing graduation requirements with families, it is essential that they are informed of the consequences of each path. There are some best practice recommendations you should consider when working with families. At the latest, at the 9th grade IEP meeting, discuss how the student will make progress towards graduation. Ideally, this conversation occurred in 8th grade prior to going to high school. Make sure you have input from all team members, including the parent and student. Determine if the student will graduate based on typical high school credit requirements or based off an IEP-driven graduation plan. The conversation needs to occur annually until they graduate because plans change. The student's graduation plan is aligned to and prepares them for their measurable post-secondary goals. Each district is required to provide transition programming for students who are 18 to 22 years old. The requirements for a student to attend such a program are the student must have completed 12th grade, be 18 to 21 years old, and have continuing transitional needs on their IEP, meaning the team at the high school, including the parent and student, agreed that the student requires a continuation of school to meet their goals. It is important to note that a transition program is an extension of high school or 12th grade. It functions very differently, and the focus is different, but is still part of K-12 education. A transition program focuses on the 3 areas of transition: employment, post-secondary education and training, and independent living skills. If a student is on a path where a transition program is appropriate, conversations with families should start by the student's 11th grade year or sooner. At the IEP meeting where transition programming will be discussed, it is essential the team reviews the student's progress towards graduation and includes other outside agencies that may be supporting the student. This is the requirement. But if the district is discussing extending the student's programming beyond 12th grade, you as the case manager need to ensure you have all the required pieces together. Again, this decision is made as a team and is based on the student demonstrating needs in the area of transition. If a student is eligible for a transition program, it does not mean they need to stay until they age out at 22. They are done when they meet their goals based on data and documentation of growth on their IEP goals, objectives, and transition services. However, some students will age out at 22. When a student has either met the graduation requirements or will be aging out, the IEP manager needs to complete a summary of performance and a prior written notice ending services. The SOP connects the evaluation report to the IEP by synthesizing the evaluation data, translating this data into statements about where the student has needs, and responding to those needs with recommendations about the student's programming. A PWN is required since graduation is considered a change in placement and special education services will be terminated. The summary of performance is like an exit meeting that is ideally completed in person. Its purpose is to confirm graduation decision, review the summary of performance, provide the student and family with the final paperwork, which include the IEP, evaluation, progress reports, the PWN, the SOP, and provide resources. Oftentimes, districts have a resource document for case managers to use. I'm going to show you what my district uses. It's also linked in this slide, and will be available for you on our Google Classroom, along with this video, slideshow, and the notes. So here it is. It's a resource guide that the transition program that I work at, we give to families at our summary of performance meeting. IDEA 2004 requires that at least 1 year before the student reaches the age of majority and legally becomes adult, the school must alert the student of their new upcoming responsibilities and provide notice of the upcoming meetings to the student as well as the parents, while all other notices will go only to the student. States determine what the age of majority is, so it can vary from state to state. But when the student reaches that age, he or she will assume legal control over educational placement, educational records, eligibility, evaluations, and programming, and any mediation or due process needed to resolve disputes. Indicator 13 is a federal special education compliance measure under the IDEA 2004 that tracks the percentage of youth with IEPs who have a coordinated, measurable, and age-appropriate transition plan to prepare them for life after high school. If a state Department of Education determines that there are discrepancies or that the district is not doing its due diligence to ensure students are getting what they need, they will complete a record review. Indicator 13 checklists typically evaluate the following 8 criteria: age-appropriate assessments, measurable post-secondary goals, making sure the district is updating goals, course of study, annual IEP goals, student invitation, and outside agencies. This type of audit is done to ensure that a district is following through with its responsibilities to students with disabilities. You, as a case manager, doing your due diligence and by serving the students to the best of your ability, can avoid this by following through with your professional obligations.